Thank you very much. Over generous with your praise, as always. Thank you so much, and it's lovely to see you. Thank you for coming on this Saturday, and I hope it's not too schoolroomish or university lecture-ish. Please, feel very relaxed and very at home here. As you know, many interesting events take place in this building. You've probably been to something before. Most people, one or two maybe haven't, but we're very happy to welcome you. So my talk today, I've entitled it Marriage, Family and World Peace. You saw on the advert there, yes, 3 organizations within the unification movement are kind of cooperating together for this event, the Universal Peace Federation, which is, of course, Robin Marsh's area, is the main one, we might say. But we're talking about subjects which are normally carried out by a sister organization, the Family Federation for World Peace and Unification. And then also we have support from the Women's Federation for World Peace. But all 3 are very concerned about this topic, marriage and family, and they're also offering special peace blessing to people who meet their respective organizations, and it's a lovely dimension actually to the work. So UPF in particular, these other organizations as well, make a strong connection between the individual and the need for integrity in the individual and the family, and from there, world peace. In other words, without good individuals of integrity and good families and a good tradition in the family, we can't really reach the goals that we want to when we talk about world peace. We have to understand this kind of connection, and this is something which is being aided, I think, through the marriage blessing. I want to speak generally because this is, as a lot of our work is, it's very much an interfaith meeting, and we're bringing people together very intentionally from different faith backgrounds or just conscientious people of no particular faith. They're also extremely welcome and extremely important for working in this peacemaking area. We want to cooperate with all kind of like-minded people in that way. But I'm going to focus first of all on the kind of religious tradition and the role that it's played and still plays in our society with regard to marriage and family. So, all world-level religious traditions, certainly, and more besides, I'm sure, uphold marriage and emphasize 2 key things. One is purity before marriage, being somehow very restrained and controlled as a person, and valuing love as something to be shared later in life. So this is putting an emphasis on the positive and valuable side of love and not giving in to worldly pressures. So purity before marriage, and also fidelity in marriage, being faithful to your spouse and maintaining that through difficult times as well as good times. And that's often reflected in the vows which are given to marrying couples at that time. They also, these religions are upholding the value of marriage in our society and supporting their young couples or young people in particular in this process, which brings together 2 families. And almost always they're thinking of that. It's not just the 2 individuals which are coming together. It's 2 families, it's 2 lineages, which might be quite different. That's why marriage sometimes is difficult, right? Because you're coming together with different experiences up until, the marriage day. And couples have to work those things out and kind of build their own tradition as well in their own family. So families are marrying together, and it's a very beautiful aspect of any wedding celebrations. Here are some pictures. If you're like me, I like a few good pictures. So this is, what kind of wedding? What tradition would this be? Yes, this is the Jewish tradition. Under the chuppah, this is the kind of symbolic of the marital home. As you see, it can be anywhere, even outside. It's a very beautiful traditions associated with that. If you are attending a Muslim wedding or Islamic wedding, it might look something like this. And here's a couple, I think, also Muslim, but from Indonesia, I believe. Very beautiful. I love that picture myself. And, this is the start of a new stage in life for these young people. It's very significant. Here, and this is a picture I love as well, this is in the Orthodox Church tradition, you'll see above the bride and groom's heads 2 crowns. So they are really like the king and queen. And that is how, maybe the nice thought is that God looks to, the husband and wife like that. They're really royal family of God. And they're also sharing a cup of wine as part of their tradition there, which is something that we do, at least in interfaith sessions, we do that with non-alcoholic wine. But still the idea of sharing a cup together is like drinking from the same source and being united in that effect. Here's a Hindu wedding, which can last a few days, right? I haven't been to a whole one, I've been to parts. And here you can see over their knees, the couple have scarves tied together. Do you see that? Which is the tradition. It symbolizes their unbreakable union. And we still use the phrase in English, tying the knot, right? So that's where it comes from, actually, tying the knot. And that's part of the many kind of beautiful traditions which form part of this wedding ceremony. Here's another one with the bride going through 7 steps. And here's a Sikh Gurdwara for the day. It's the marriage of this young couple, and they're doing it in the most holy place for worship with a lot of chanting and music and fellowship and food. Here's a Christian tradition, fairly typical. It can take different forms, but this looks to me maybe like a Baptist church somewhere, something like that tradition. I'm not entirely sure, but you can see the bride and the groom at the front and the father of the bride there who walks his daughter down the aisle and traditionally gives her away to this other family. In the Korean tradition, my wife is from Korea. I have to say a little shout out to her here, because she's the one who's put up with me for all these years. Then there, when you have your traditional Korean wedding, after that, the brothers-in-law, your brothers-in-law, get hold of you and turn you upside down, and they beat your feet in a wonderful ceremony called Tengipuri, I think it is, isn't it? Although mine didn't really have the courage to do it to me, disappointingly, right? And that's a way of saying, yes, we are accepting you, but you're not really worthy to be married to our sister. So you have to pay a little price, right? It's all done in great fun, right? And jest. So a bit like we used to give people the bumps on their birthday, but I'm sure that's banned now, isn't it? Anyway, so that's a tradition. Here's the beginnings of our unificationist tradition, or UPF tradition. This is the origins of the World Peace blessing. Good afternoon, Sheikh. Nice to see you. Wonderful. From early photograph, this is back in 1960, when Father Moon first, either side of his own wedding, he arranged from amongst his followers, there would be 36 couples. Right? They had come to that through different routes. Some were previously married, some were never married at all and never had any relationship. So 3 sets of 12 couples, and this is one set of 12. So in the time when he was, active here, of course he's now, passed on to the spiritual realm, but these blessings which he initiated multiplied in size and in scope. Also took on a decidedly interfaith nature. So this is one of the largest. Yes, all those specks of white are wedding dresses, right? So this is 30,000 couples in the stadium that was built for the Seoul Olympics in 1988. And this took place in 1992, quite amazingly. And also there was a link up with other such ceremonies in other countries through satellite technology. And that tends to be what happens more and more, right? We can do that without involving so many airfares. But it's always nice to go to the central point where the officiators are. Here's another, quite a different style, but also one of these same interfaith marriage blessings, and this is taking place in the United Nations building in New York, and that was in 2001, 210 couples. Actually, strictly, they don't allow religious ceremonies in the UN, so I hope I'm not exposing anybody to problems, but the way to get around that was to, not wear the wedding dresses, but have everybody come in their national costume, right? And where better place to put on your national costume than the United Nations? So there they all are. That explains the many colors and beautiful clothes which are there. Everybody turning up with that kind of national pride, but for a purpose of coming together. At the larger blessing ceremonies also, Father Moon introduced having at the start blessing prayers from different faith traditions. So here you see Buddhist, Sikh, Muslim representatives alongside Native American, Hindu, and Christian. Religious leaders in their own right, but there to give their blessing to the same couples. It's in a way saying this is not a narrow province of one tradition. It's for everybody. It's to celebrate publicly marriage and family in this way. So here's another one with Father and Mother Moon. They're together in those days, and they're saying the prayer over the couples in the background. You can see them there, outdoors. And here's an ambassador for peace. I don't know if you're familiar with the term ambassador for peace, but in UPF we bestow that upon certain individuals who are very, very serving and are doing important things for their community, very public-minded, and they become part of this network of like-minded people. And this is a couple from Sweden, actually. They're rededicating their marriage vows and been married for 35 years, this couple, but they felt, let's take it to another dimension by participating in this program. So for some people, these events are their wedding day, for which they've prepared sometimes for many years, right? At least a year, because the large ones come around once a year at the moment. So it's like saying, next year, next October, let's go to the marriage blessing and let's get ourselves ready, right, for that. So it's very exciting for our young people to participate that way, but also it's a time for rededicating your marriage and renewing your vows. So, there are certain blessings of life as a basis for happiness, and if you have attended the UPF one-day seminar, I think quite a few people have done that. I'm talking about this kind of a little more fully, so I'm going to skip over it fairly shortly here, but just either remind you or just kind of introduce it as a certain seed in your thinking, really. Everybody's looking for happiness, right? We're looking and seeking happiness in life. Almost it's something that it's quite right to be seeking that. We're here to experience life in all its fullness and everything which can go to, bring us that happiness. So the first kind of aspect of in UPF we call it a foundation of peace. A foundation of peace is to do with the individual. And that means, first of all, I have to mature myself, especially, grow spiritually as well as, physically. Physically, we grow if we're fed and watered properly. Not so much problem there. But to nurture a human being, to bring out their full humanity and all that potential which is there, takes a lot of spiritual education. Doesn't it, Sheikh Ramzi, right? It's very necessary. But I could say, doesn't it any parent? This is what a parent is doing. You're raising these young infants and having them kind of learn to work their mind and their body together in a good way. Mind means also their personality, their heart, their spirit has to engage with their body in such a way that they can become more in the image of God. Right? This is the goal, and we can see then through a properly united mind and body, the person takes on that image in spirit and in physical self. They're becoming such an object to receive the love of God and have the love of God dwell within them. So God dwells in the individual, we can say, whose mind and body unite in a life of love for God, which is something that has to be learnt and experienced through the family, and then then one has it for life, and one has to learn to love others, and that's what one is doing. If you're lucky enough to have siblings, brothers and sisters, older and younger, you're learning to work all these things out and develop your relationships in the process. So when a person has achieved a certain level of such maturity, it's very natural. They'll feel, well, I want to move on to a new stage in life. I want to find somebody to settle down with and even make a family. That's a natural desire. It's not everybody's choice to do that. So I'm not saying that if we don't do that, there's a problem. But it's a very natural thing, isn't it, right? It's very natural. And God dwells in the family, in this case, where husband and wife can unite together, centered. If they have a shared faith and understanding of God, it's very helpful and a good basis whereby they can stand almost like in the position of God to their children. And it's through having children that a human being learns something that they couldn't learn as an individual. Learn not only how to love such a new life that's been brought into the world from oneself as parents, and is very connected to oneself in that way, but also you're learning something about how God loves you or me, right? Through this experience, because this is why we often refer to God's love as analogous to a kind of parental love, and we can think of it in that term. So when there is a family that's working well like this under God's blessing, and there's happiness in the family and peace in the family, then that can expand, and what is learned in that environment can become the basis for norms of relationship outside the family, in society. And when a young person grows up, they'll take that with them. Ideally, they should be, say, treating an elderly person that they meet on the bus or wherever they are or at work as if they were their own grandfather or grandmother. Should have that kind of respect. Or an elder person as my elder brother or sister, or a younger person, I should feel I have to take care of them, as I would my own younger siblings. This kind of mind, what is learnt in the family, should actually be expanded outside the family. Are you with me? So it's a simple but quite profound idea of how to make society work better, to be governed more by a parental kind of heart of love rather than sibling rivalry, as is often the norm today, right? It's like brothers fighting together when you get in a political arena of any sort, right? So the third real blessing for our peace and our happiness is our relationship to the whole natural world and the environment, and finding our place in the world, including, developing together the technology and the means for creating a better society and a better environment for everybody, to everybody's mutual benefit. So in this way, we can move towards creating more of an ideal world. And there's a strong drive in people to do this, isn't there? And that is why people want to get on. And you often hear young people saying, I want to make a contribution to the world. I want to do something. That's why I've gone into, biochemistry or something, or I want to help find a cure for cancer, or I want to, be involved with some kind of new area of engineering that is just at its infancy, and see it develop. There's this kind of drive in human beings, which is something I'm sure comes from our Creator. When we put these together, we have the kind of way in which we as human beings can inherit God's life, God's love, which is very much there in the midst of all these relationships, and also lineage, because it's there to be passed on to the next generations. Isn't that wonderful? Yeah. And I say, and I especially say to our young people, when I'm teaching them, if you look at that scheme, if you think of this as a kind of scheme for our happiness, finding meaning and value in life, really everything that we could wish for is there. There's nothing for our happiness which isn't there. And I set them that as a kind of question. Can you come up with something? I haven't had anybody come up with it yet, so anyway. Yes, it's a very kind of free system. That's why I never think of it as like religious doctrine. It's talking about life itself, right? This is the blessing of life, and yet many people are not clear on this. They don't know. They wonder, what is the meaning of life? Why am I here? What am I meant to do? Why am I so happy and miserable? I'm thinking, maybe is life worth living? Maybe it's not. We have many people in our quite affluent society who are thinking this way. It means we still a lot to learn on this, actually, right? So even though simple, the way I've put it, it's again very profound and takes a lot of kind of thought to bring us back to understand its full value. So in realizing these, we say, 3 blessings for our happiness, we fulfill the purpose for which we are created, the very reason why we're here. And, happiness comes through fulfilling the purpose for which we are made, right? It's very natural, so we need to discover that. We call this, I called it Foundations for Peace, or for Happiness. I've used that kind of term. You'll find it in the great religious traditions. If you go to the book of Genesis, our first book in the Bible, it says there, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it, or have dominion. And this is referring to these 3 aspects of life. But here is just single word concepts almost, right? To be fruitful is this individual kind of development and maturation, and it's spiritual growth. It's learning to love, and it's learning to be loved. Then it's having multiplying, but not just kind of mechanically. It means to really, we have to do that in the right way, with all the extraordinary benefits which are there to be experienced and enjoyed in the family, which Father Moon used to call it the only institution designed by God, right? Is the family. That's it. Therefore, we should be very, very careful about just abandoning it, as is happening in some areas of our society, right? Because it's not a social construct. It's something much more fundamental. At least this is the message I'm giving you today, right? So, be fruitful is to grow to maturity as an individual. To multiply is to marry, have children, and raise a loving family. And having dominion over creation is exercising a very loving stewardship over the material world and becoming responsible. And that's a kind of joint exercise as well we need to do as humanity. So we're just waking up to that challenge, I think, nowadays. It's been a long time coming, but hopefully not too late. And we can see a beautiful world passed on to subsequent generations. So in the center of that is this ideal of the family. The family maintains and develops these aspects of love, life, and lineage. So we can say it's the kind of key building block for a world of peace. Without the things which are there to be learnt in the family, individuals are going to be at risk of interfering and causing problems in society, right? So it's very essential to come back to this, to reevaluate the family, and that's part of the process of this peace blessing, or this day's event is part of that process. How do other religious traditions look at that? I can't give a fair sample of every tradition, so if yours is not here, please forgive me. but I've just chosen 3 here. First is from the Sikh tradition. There it says in the Adi Granth Sahib, it says, they are not said to be husband and wife who merely sit together. Right? They alone are called husband and wife who have one light in 2 bodies. Rather beautiful, isn't it? So, for Sikh understanding, marriage is a relationship that assists one in understanding Waheguru, God, and achieving spiritual enlightenment. It's there for that purpose. In Islam, in the Surah Al-Baqarah, it says, your spouses are a garment for you as you are for them. Would you accept that translation? Yeah? Because there's a minefield there as well, right? So thank you. I'm I was nervous about that this morning. But it's beautiful, isn't it? Anyway, it's very beautiful. So in marriage, this is saying spouses protect as well as beautify one another. This is the kind of garment that you put on. The word garment can be seen as meaning to provide comfort, chastity, and protection. It's there for these reasons. Truly, that's a lifetime commitment for both spouses, which will lead to joy and comfort in marriage itself. So very beautiful. And I like this quotation because I don't know the context, but as it is there, you don't know if wives are being spoken to or husbands are being spoken to, right? Because it's mutual, it's for both, right? So here's something from Father Moon, his tradition, right? In order to reach the love of God, we must come together as plus and minus. His kind of scientific training is coming in there, I think, right? This is why men need women and women need men, so that together we can create the harmony with which we can reach the love of God. So we need that unity and harmony to reach a deeper aspect and experience of God. This is the entire purpose of creation. This is it. It's wrapped up in those words, those 3 blessings that we talked about. Okay. We've been talking in very ideal terms, right? I'm very aware of that. And so often people are thinking, oh yes, but life isn't like that, and my life isn't like that, and my parents weren't like that, and yes, no, I quite understand that. But important, for our progress in this area is to understand an ideal, something which is to aim for, even though it's not a kind of fixed goal. You can't say when you've achieved it, but it's like to aim at, because it's the original blueprint or plan or idea in the heart and mind of God. So this is what we want to discern and make our own kind of aspirations in life. What went wrong? Well, we realize that kind of same scheme, but not with ourselves centered on common values that originate in our Creator and therefore are connected to our purpose of life, which comes from God. So we see it kind of occupied by that rather miserable-looking grey oval, right? So you have to put something there. In religious terms, in the Christian world, you might say Satan, That became, as Jesus said, Satan is the god of this world, or you are of your father the devil, this kind of idea. And that is, a common idea in many religious traditions as well. But even you could say, well, we don't have a common purpose of goodness. We don't have some kind of high values or high virtues to kind of be the moderating and controlling aspect to our relationships. So without that, there's a kind of looseness, a kind of unhelpful freedom to life. And we can end up with the kind of wrong priorities in life, you can say. So this is the reality of the human condition, the loss of love, life, and lineage in their true kind of joy-producing forms. Are you with me? It's not bringing the full joy, which in a way we are promised or seeking. So, the reality in the world is that so many of us are spiritually immature. We're people of self-centered love. And we take that into our marriage relationships, if we have a marriage, And therefore our personal problems get passed into that situation and can affect it adversely, right? So even though a couple can be very much in love in the early days of their relationship, if the husband is in essence very self-centered, that's going to come out later on in the marriage, even if it's not there in the beginning, right? And it's going to disturb things, or it's going to affect the children, this kind of thing. So, and likewise, there can be problems on either side. So, this is, why importance of the integrity of the individual is there, and then establishing good traditions in the family. And also, as a kind of distortion of that third foundation of peace, you see greed and self-interest are often the kind of dominant factors, right, in people's relationship with the environment, and even misusing, scientific discoveries for, purposes of power and unrighteous domination, this kind of thing. So creating imbalance and lack of harmony. Does that ring true to everybody? It is a kind of obvious reality, isn't it? And Father Moon talks about that. He said, what is the reality of our world today? Disorder and sickness of every kind, including war, violence, and drug abuse. They've infected humankind. More important, the rapid collapse of sexual morality among the young, the increasing divorce rate, the breakdown of the family are all destroying the foundations of human society. All these things originate from this fall, what went wrong in the beginning of human history. Again, that's not to bring any judgment on any individual or any couple or anything like that. It's just a kind of the fact that so much of our world is involved with this, that it's not able to really effectively even those people who are genuinely in need, right? So we have to reverse that. We have to, as I said, reevaluate marriage and family and see it restored to its original position. So this fall that religion talks about is the origin of human misery. And, human beings have inherited certain things. We've inherited within ourselves a contradictory nature, a conscience that pulls us one way, but other desires that pull us almost in opposite direction, more self-centered desires. We have a tendency to indulge our physical desires in a self-centered way. And we also see there's a tendency to misuse nature and material things, or put them as the kind of subject in our life and make them the goal in our life or the dominating factor, whereas they should be under our dominion, and we shouldn't be influenced by that. And also we suffer from an ignorance of God and deeper things in life and the reality of the spiritual dimension, which is very real. So this false tradition leads us to or started out even with a corruption of love itself. And that is very essential to Father Moon's own understanding, which I'll leave for another day. But the result of what went wrong in the beginning, we can say, is that our love, even though we use the word love in all kinds of situations, love as is often experienced and practiced is not true, genuine love, right? And we have to define the two. So I've got a helpful little definition for you, all right? You don't even have to write this down. You can memorize this. Conditional, false, or imitation love is, I care how you make me feel, right? That's my perspective, right? So you make me feel good, I love you. Suddenly you criticized me or you pointed out some fault that I have and I don't like you anymore, right? I don't love you anymore. That means a changeable kind of love, which is all affected by the self, right? So I care how you make me feel. And parents can be guilty of this towards children as well, Children can get rewarded only when they do well or they come home with a good grade. And then if they come home with a bad grade, they might be told off. And then they feel, doesn't my parent love me anymore? Can be very heartbreaking for a young soul. So we have to be very careful. It's a difficult role of parents, actually, isn't it? You have to, yes, correct. You have to, assist, you have to point out certain things which a child shouldn't be doing, but with love, never with a kind of self-centered feeling, oh, you make me feel bad or embarrassed or ashamed or, irritated. No, it has to be love. So, true, genuine love is, and this is the second definition, unconditionally caring about the happiness of another person or the other person, right, in a relationship, because love exists always in a relationship. So, when we're there giving our full attention to the person in front of us, that's when we're exercising true love. We're really attending them fully. That means unconditionally caring about their happiness. I find that rather beautiful, actually very helpful, also very judgmental, right? Because I think, I'm often slipping from that standard. But we need that. This is what, benefit of religious teaching is that, it helps us. It's like a mirror, we can look at ourselves and we can say, how is my conscience bearing up to this, What has it got to tell me today? And what should I change about myself? I have a few interreligious quotations for you. Are you ready? They're all to do with this topic of the misuse of love, right? So, this is just different perspectives. I'm just putting them before you. Here in Jainism, it says, it is better to die than to indulge in partaking of forbidden lustful pleasure. I think that's quite strong. You'd agree with me, right? The way it's put there. Here in Buddhism, the man who goes to the wife of another digs up the very roots of life. It's getting to something very basic and therefore damaging. Here in the Holy Quran, do not come near adultery, for it's a shameful deed and evil, opening the road to other evils. It's a kind of gateway problem or misuse of love. Here in Judaism, in the Talmud, what was the wicked serpent contemplating at that time? It's going back to that Garden of Eden story, right? He thought, I shall go and kill Adam and wed his wife, and I shall be king over the whole world. This is the way to advance yourself, right? No, right? This is a very evil way to do that. But it's saying that that was the kind of process that was going on at the beginning of our history, and we're suffering consequences of that. Here in Hinduism, it has an interesting story. It says, formerly, all creatures were virtuous, and by themselves they obtained divinity. Then women who had been virtuous became wicked witches. Sorry, women, this is not my words, but... and Brahma filled them with wanton desires, which they in turn inspired in men. He created anger, and henceforth all creatures were born in the power of desire and anger. Interesting. They're kind of all coming from different angles to the same thing, right? It's like it's almost like I don't know if you've had this, the parents amongst us, this experience when your child. I remember my eldest daughter, first child, saying just before going to bed one night, why are those evil people doing that, Daddy? Right? She'd heard something on the news about war or bombings or this kind of thing, And to hear that from your innocent child for the first time is very painful, because you have to now, you can't hide the fact that there's much about the world which is, terrible. And you're going to have to come to terms with that. Are you with me? So, I think sometimes these stories are in response to that. It's more in, how do we explain this to our children? And why this family, this branch of the family over there hates us so much, Or why we never talk to them. Why is that, Or what they did to your uncle or something like that. So these things stick, and people search for some explanation and some meaning. St. Paul in the New Testament said, flee from sexual immorality, run away. He who sins sexually sins against his own body. It's like defiling your holy temple. And therefore you're the one who's going to suffer through that. Others too, probably, but you will also suffer. And here in Sikhism, sexual desire is the window, pain and pleasure are the gatekeepers, virtue and sin are the gates. A little more poetic there. It takes some thinking. That's the advantage of poetry. So even ancient religions like ancient Greece, right? We have religion there. I'm looking at a couple here from father and son with a good ancestry in that area, right? So, the gods of Greece and Rome, they were pretty fallen gods, right? They all had these bad aspects that we see in the worst of human nature, greed and anger and, lustful desires, all this kind of thing. And in a way, it's an explanation, but it's saying we're like this because the gods are like that, right? So we're kind of in that image, but it doesn't have this idea of some kind of pure ideal to which we need to return. And it's there. You get stories like of how evil came into the world through Pandora's box. She was told not to open this box. Whatever she did, do not open the box. What's the very thing you want to do? Open the box, right? Have a peek. So, according to one telling of that story, just the night before her wedding, that's when she said, I just want to open that box. She opened the box and all evils of the world came out. Curious. The only thing that was left was hope, right? Only thing left in the box. So we have hope, right? So putting things right. Why is it so difficult to put things right? Again, I go back to a beautiful story that Father Moon told as part of his talk or sermon. He said, think about it. Which is easier to create? If you have a rotten apple, can you create a new apple? Or can you take a rotten apple and make it whole again? Which is the easier of the two? Well, we would say, I can't do either, right? This is in the hands of God, right? But even God works according to the laws of the universe, which he set up. So there's natural law there, Trees produce fruit, the fruit ripens and then drops to the ground and goes rotten. It's a cycle, isn't it? And within that is the seed that provides, the next generation. So there's this kind of order there. But it's against the order of things to expect even God to take a rotten apple and make it good again. That is just not natural, right? But in a way, because the corruption within human beings is something deep inside the human heart and the way that we use or misuse love, to change that is also very difficult, right? It's like changing something which is rotten and trying to make it good again. Therefore, you see references in religion which say externally you look fine and you look very handsome, but internally, you're dead or you're, rotten or something like that, this kind of analogy. So we can say to restore this problem, which happened this way, our first ancestors fell, they created a realm for themselves outside of those lovely 3 green areas, which are like the natural kind of area of growth where natural law is operating and God is operating in that area. They created something for themselves and for a legacy to us, which we call hell. It's not the ideal. It's something very false. It should never be there. And history has been a history of kind of raising up the standard, spiritually, intellectually, in other ways, and in terms of religious development for human beings to come back, at least to the point that we were at before we fell away. So we have to come to that level first of all. It requires our effort to do that and the payment of some price. And then that final stage for humanity is an area that we've never really gone through. That's why it's so difficult. It's like a final stage of evolution almost, evolution of the heart, how to live together as one family under God. And it's at that point that we see this is where kind of great figures of religion are there to meet people coming up. If they have the heart to listen and to hear what is being said, they will be able to go with that person, that great teacher, further along this uncharted territory, right? Because they will have a guide. Therefore, we see the progress of religion is made through always having such individuals come who are God-inspired people. really, whether it's a prophet or you have a Saoshyant in the Zoroastrian religion, which translates as world restorer, interestingly. Or you have a Messiah in the Judeo-Christian tradition. You have this kind of person who's coming to save or to enlighten or to bring enlightenment, a kind of Buddha type of person. There are many. Father Moon always thought, in the end, ultimately these are the same person or couple, because he talked about the necessity for a couple. So it's like restoring that role of the first ancestors. It has to be restored to become a true man, true woman who live together with that heart of true love and practice it according to our definition, right? And then we can go through to the final stage. We can build a peaceful, ideal world this way. It's at this point that this blessing idea of marriage comes in. We're not blessed in marriage because we're perfect, far from it, because we then have someone, including God, in our relationship, that we can work together to progress through that kind of final stage. And that's what's open to us, because, again, we're looking to the fulfillment of happiness. So it's our responsibility to follow and to learn and then practice, really, up to the level of the great kind of teacher or person or prophet or whoever that we follow. And so this is why all such major religions have something very beneficial for humanity. And hopefully we all meet together one day, right? Because our goal is the same goal. If I just think about the celibate religious life, which was a practice in some traditions, it's paying a price. Certain people paying a great price to reverse humanity's spiritual decline. And you get these traditions in different areas, from Hinduism to Anglicanism to Catholic to Buddhist. And they are mostly in common, they have 3 vows, vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. Have you heard those before? It's what medieval monks would, devote their lives to and take vows for life. So this is a life of devotion to become like God, as we explained it in fulfilling our original God-given purpose. But if we follow that path of obedience, chastity, and poverty, then we're fulfilling the first blessing, or striving to do that, but we're foregoing the second. We're not having any relationship with a person of the opposite sex. We're not having a married relationship. Therefore, I'm giving up something so important and fundamental, but because I feel I have to sort out my own relationship with God first. Are you with me? It's quite a sacrifice. And also taking on a life of poverty means I'm going to demonstrate that I'm not affected or dominated by material things. I can live without them. But that is not the ideal, right? Very practically, if everybody was celibate, we'd all die out, right? So, it can't all go that way. So what is it? We have to still, become in God's image in that way. We need to create one family, and now is the time that we can really think and talk about this and execute this as a human family. And then we need to ensure we're not living in poverty, but mutual prosperity. Everybody should be helped, and we should enjoy that as a human race, as one family, as we say, one family loved by God. So for this purpose, marriage is so important. It's the place for conjugal love, for mutual support, and for comfort. It's the proper and only place, according to this understanding, for sexual relations. It's creating new life and raising children. And that's so precious and so important. And that's not a new idea, the importance of husband and wife together. I thank Pastor William for showing me this quotation from St. John Chrysostom. So this is like end of the 4th century, I would think. When husband and wife are united in marriage, they are no longer seen as something earthly, but as the image of God himself. So it's the unity of husband and wife, which is a more complete image of God than the individual. Interesting, isn't it? And that's, 1800 years ago or something, right? So today we're going to introduce, even practically, this peace blessing. We've invited you to take part if you're willing. We'll do a very simplified version. But in its fullness, and I showed you some pictures there of the larger blessing ceremonies. Do you remember those marriage ceremonies in this tradition? Interfaith ceremonies. It's very much likened to like a grafting process, especially for those who are, for whom it's their marriage. It's like a very pure and clean grafting process. So we all come from different roots, but we want to take away, what is not producing good fruit. And the way a fruit farmer does it, he cuts it off, right? It looks quite brutal. You see the trunk is cut off, but the root system is all there, and then splices into it these beautiful scions from a good fruit-producing tree, and quickly that tree can grow to produce good fruit. And when you're biting into that beautiful, tasty fruit, you're not going to say, where did this root come from, right? That's lost in history, right? It doesn't matter by that stage. How to produce good fruit. This is the question. So Father Moon picks up on this very kind of biblical and scriptural analogy, really. He says here, the deepest part of yourself is your original mind. Below that is the fertile ground of God. Put your original mind into the fertile ground of God. The engrafting process means that you cut off all the branches but leave the root. Then true branches are engrafted onto the old root, and when true branches are brought in, it becomes a new tree. That is the engrafting process. Wow. When this process takes place, even though the root is the same, the old root will be transformed into a new root. That's it. Very beautiful. So, in readiness to receive the marriage blessing, then we say as a kind of basis, then especially couples should have the determination to respect their spouse and keep their love pure. So if this is renewing somebody's vows, we'd emphasize this. Having a determination as husband and wife to be faithful to each other. Having a heart to become a true parent, right? Whether it's your own children or to other people. And a heart of living for the sake of others. That's the kind of heart of this tradition. And there are various components. There's a holy wine or holy juice, which means, emphasizes the non-alcoholic nature of that, which the couple share, that cup. There's a blessing ceremony on these big occasions, which is solemn yet joyous and includes exchanging vows and exchanging rings and, things which are common in other traditions as well. It has something, which we won't be doing today, which is called a chastening ceremony. That means some beautifully constructed ceremony to say, with our couple, any kind of violence that was practiced in the past stops, right? It's not going to be present in our relationship. And that's important because that is, in a way, an unsavory and sometimes shameful hidden element to many marriages, right? That there's abuse going on, and that has to stop, absolutely. So we have to talk about it in order to confront it and end it. Are you with me? Well, and then there's a blessing ceremony. We'll have some of these things offered today, reciting wedding vows and a blessing prayer. And even there's a way for a couple renewing their vows to renew their love as husband and wife, their physical relationship, in a very holy way, in a very beautiful way, to really feel that that's a new start, that we're sharing together. But we won't go into that today either. But, just wanted to kind of show that there's more than we can talk about today, and it's there for couples that feel it would be really helpful for themselves, and they'd like to be part of this. What is a worldwide effort, actually, as you said. This is going on all around the world, and I think when we reach a certain threshold, we'll have that kind of very positive effect. Maybe the whole atmosphere of the world changes, right? And we'll see a new kind of atmosphere of love, of compassion, of tolerance, of understanding, of valuing, what's really important in life. Anyway, I hope I've said nothing to offend you, and I hope I've said something which you can take away with you and feel is important. So with that, I want to say thank you very much. God bless you, everybody.